Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Some honor the memory of the dead, others pawn it for $800. Today in the rLounge, grief comes with all kinds of coping strategies, I guess. My stepson stole my deceased wife's jewelry to give to his girlfriend. I'm cutting him out of the inheritance completely. My wife passed away 3 weeks ago after fighting cancer for 3 years. We were married for 18 years, and those were the best years of my life. She was everything to me. Even during her illness, she was more concerned about how I was handling things than her own pain. We didn't have biological children together, but I became a stepfather to her son when he was 12. He's 28 now. Our relationship was never particularly close, but I always tried my best. The funeral was tough. My stepson showed up 20 minutes late with his girlfriend of about 4 months. I'd only met her twice before, and neither time left a good impression. They both came dressed like they were going to a casual lunch. He was wearing jeans and she had on some crop top thing. Family members who traveled across the country to be there noticed and mentioned it to me later. What bothered me more was how little he interacted with anyone. He barely spoke to his aunts and uncles who hadn't seen them in years. After the funeral, I learned I was the executor of my wife's estate. According to her will, her assets would be divided with 70% coming to me and 30% to her son. Our home, savings, and her personal belongings, including family heirloom jewelry that had been passed down from her grandmother. The jewelry collection was something my wife treasured. There were pieces her grandmother had given her, items we'd bought together celebrating her anniversaries, and several pieces she specifically wanted saved for her son's future wife. She talked about this often during her illness, making me promise to keep certain items for when he finally meets the right girl. The collection included her diamond engagement ring, her grandmother's pearl necklace, and a pair of sapphire earrings that had been in her family for generations. Going through her things was excruciating. Each item held memories, and the jewelry especially felt like holding pieces of her in my hands. I organized everything into a special box, making note of which pieces she had specifically mentioned saving for her son's future wife. About 2 weeks after the funeral, my stepson texted me asking when he would get his stuff. I explained that the probate process takes time, but assured him he would receive his inheritance as outlined in the will. His response was just, "Whatever, let me know." A week later, he and his girlfriend showed up at the house unannounced. They wanted to look through some of my wife's things, for memories. I let them in, and I went to make coffee while they browsed in the bedroom where I'd been sorting things. The next day I noticed something was off. The jewelry box had been moved from where I'd carefully placed it. When I opened it, my heart sank. Several key pieces were missing. My wife's diamond engagement ring, her grandmother's pearl necklace, and those sapphire earrings that were meant to be family heirlooms. I immediately texted my stepson asking if he had taken any jewelry. His response was, "Yeah, I borrowed a few pieces because Amber wanted to see them." I told him those weren't his to take and demand he return them immediately. He showed up the next day with only the engagement ring. He claimed his girlfriend had misplaced the other items and they were still looking for them. The ring itself was damaged, one of the prongs was bent, and the diamond was loose in the setting. When I pointed this out, he just shrugged and said it was already like that. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt until I saw an Instagram post from his girlfriend 2 days later. She was at some club wearing my deceased wife's pearl necklace. The caption read, "Feeling fancy, thanks to Bae," with my stepson tagged in the photo. I took screenshots and sent them to him, demanding an explanation. His response floored me. "She deserves nice things too. Mom would have wanted her jewelry to be worn, not sitting in some box." The next day, I drove to his apartment unannounced. His girlfriend answered the door wearing the sapphire earrings, the ones that were supposedly misplaced. When I called her out, she actually laughed and said, "Finders keepers. She's dead. What does she care?" I was stunned. My stepson came to the door and I demanded to return all the jewelry. He told me I was overreacting and that they were just things. I reminded him that these were his mother's treasured possessions that she wanted preserved as family heirlooms. "She's gone. What difference does it make who wears them stuff now?" The next day, I contacted my attorney about removing my stepson from my will. I learned that while I couldn't change my wife's will, I could change mine. I had always planned to leave everything to him after my passing, believing that's what my wife would have wanted. I also filed a police report about the stolen jewelry. My stepson's reaction to the police contact was explosive. He bombarded me with angry texts calling me a pathetic old man and threatening to contest his mother's will if I didn't drop what he called the theft nonsense. He claimed the jewelry was part of his inheritance anyway, completely ignoring that the probate wasn't complete and that his mother had specific wishes for those pieces. I changed all of my personal accounts, insurance policies, and retirement beneficiaries, removing my stepson completely. I'd spent years building my own assets separate from what my wife and I shared, and I had always assumed they would eventually go to him. Not anymore. I gave my stepson an ultimatum: return the remaining jewelry within 48 hours or I would pursue criminal charges and cut him out of my will entirely. His response was to send me laughing emojis. When the 48-hour deadline passed with no jewelry returned, I finalized the paperwork to remove him from my will. I sent him a brief text. I've removed you from my will. Your mother would be heartbroken to see what you've become. His girlfriend's callous, "She's dead, what does she care?" comment keeps replaying in my head. The truth is, my wife would care deeply. She was so intentional about wanting certain pieces preserved for family milestones. The idea of her cherished heirlooms being worn to clubs by a girlfriend of a few months would have devastated her. What makes this even harder to process is that my stepson knows this. He grew up hearing the stories behind each piece. He knows how his great-grandmother saved for years to buy those sapphire earrings. He knows the pearl necklace was worn by his mother at her own wedding. He knows the engagement ring was something she never took off until her final hospital stay. I kept wondering where I went wrong. I came into his life when he was 12, and while we were never as close as I'd hoped, I always thought I had his respect at minimum. I supported him through college, helped him buy his first car, and was there for every milestone his mother couldn't miss. Now, just weeks after her death, he's stealing her most precious possessions to impress a girlfriend. He'll still receive the 30% of her estate that she designated for him. I can't change that, nor would I want to go against her wishes. But my own assets, my own will, those I can control. This isn't how I imagined spending the weeks after my wife's passing. Letting them in was a mistake, but I thought I'd be surrounded by family, sharing memories, supporting each other through grief. Instead, I'm dealing with theft, police reports, and changing legal documents. His mom isn't even cold in the ground, and he's letting his bargain bin girlfriend play dress up in her jewelry, and that "she's dead, what does she care" line? What the heck? Good on you for cutting him out of your will and filing a police report. He doesn't deserve a dime more than what the law forces you to give him. He's already shown you who he is. A grown man who'd rather pawn off his mother's memory for validation than act like a decent human being. Update. A lot has happened since I last posted. 4 days after I sent that text informing my stepson he was cut from my will, he showed up at my door unannounced. This was the first time I'd seen him since our confrontation at his apartment. He looked terrible. Unshaven, bloodshot eyes. He immediately launched into the whole speech about how sorry he was and how he'd made a terrible mistake. According to him, his girlfriend had pressured him into taking the jewelry. She supposedly kept saying things like, "Your mom would want me to have these," and "they're just gathering dust otherwise." I didn't buy it for a second. I reminded him that he was a 28-year-old man, not some teenager being peer pressured. He made his own choices. I told him my decision stood unless all jewelry was returned undamaged. He promised to give everything back. I didn't hold my breath. The next day, a small package arrived at my door. Inside were the sapphire earrings, or what was left of them. One earring was missing a stone completely. The pearl necklace was still nowhere to be found. There was a note that read, "This is all we could find. Be reasonable." Be reasonable? I'm supposed to be reasonable? I called my stepson immediately. No answer. I texted him about the missing stone and necklace. His response? "We looked everywhere. That's all there is. The stone probably fell out somewhere. Not our fault." I was seething. These weren't just any jewelry pieces. They were irreplaceable family heirlooms. The sapphire in those stone earrings was over 100 years old. The pearl necklace had been worn by 4 generations of women in my wife's family. 2 days later, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in months. An old family friend who runs a local business. She mentioned she'd seen my stepson's girlfriend wearing what looked like my wife's pearl necklace at a restaurant last week. She only brought it up because she thought it was odd, knowing how protective my wife had been of her family jewelry. This conversation led me to wonder if the necklace hadn't been lost at all. I started searching online and checking local pawn shops. At the 3rd shop I visited, the owner recognized the description immediately. He pulled up transaction records showing my stepson's girlfriend had pawned the necklace a week earlier for $800. $800! That's what she thought my wife's legacy was worth. This necklace was easily valued at over $5,000, but the sentimental value was truly priceless. Unfortunately, the pawnshop owner informed me the necklace had already been sold. He seemed genuinely apologetic and provided me with all the transaction records, including a copy of the girlfriend's ID and signature on the sale form. I took this information straight to the police and my attorney. With the transaction records and the original police report, plus the partial return of the damaged earrings, the case was now being treated as felony theft due to the value of the items. 2 days later, I got word that my stepson's girlfriend had been brought in for questioning. According to the officer who called me, she immediately threw my stepson under the bus. She claimed he told her the jewelry was his inheritance and she could do whatever with it. She insisted she had no idea the items were stolen and that my stepson had assured her everything was above board. My stepson called me that evening, absolutely furious. He was screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. According to him, I'd ruined his life over some old junk. His girlfriend was threatening to break up with him because of the police involvement. I hung up mid-rant. I had zero interest in his tantrums. 5 days later, something unexpected happened. I received an email from someone who had purchased the pearl necklace. They had seen a police bulletin about stolen jewelry and recognized the description. They reached out saying they were willing to return the necklace for what they paid the pawn shop. I immediately agreed and arranged to meet them. I took the necklace to a specialist jeweler who examined it carefully. They said restoration was possible, but would be expensive and time-consuming. Some of the pearls would need to be replaced, which meant they wouldn't be all original anymore. Still, it was better than having lost it forever. Meanwhile, the legal process moved forward. My stepson's girlfriend was officially charged with receiving stolen property and selling stolen goods. My stepson was facing potential accessory charges. The evidence was pretty damning. Transaction records, surveillance footage from the pawn shop, and his girlfriend's statement. Through all of this, my stepson's behavior only got worse. One night around 2 a.m., I was awakened by pounding on my front door. I found him on my porch, clearly drunk, yelling that I'd always hated him and just wanted his mom to myself. He went on and on about how I was never his real dad and had been waiting for a chance to cut him out. I recorded the entire tirade on my phone while calling the police. By the time officers arrived, he had progressed to kicking my door and threatening to make me sorry. The officers took him away and I filed for a restraining order the next morning. It was granted quickly given the circumstances. I changed all the locks in my house and installed security cameras around the property. I never thought I'd need protection from my wife's son, but here we are. Throughout all of this, the probate process for my wife's estate continued. I received notice that it was finally complete. As per her will, my stepson would receive his 30% of her estate. I couldn't change that, nor would I want to go against her wishes, but he would receive nothing beyond that from me. Others have fully supported my decision, especially after hearing about the pawned necklace and drunken tirade. My wife's sister told me, "You've done more for him than most would have in your position. He's shown his true character." I still struggle with grief every day. Missing my wife is a constant ache that never fully subsides. But now that ache is compounded by disappointment and anger at her son's behavior. Sometimes I wonder if I could have done something differently over the years to help him become a better person. But at 28, his choices are his own. The damage to the jewelry feels symbolic of the damage to our family. The missing sapphire, the broken pearls, they represent the broken trust and lost relationship. Some things can be repaired, but they'll never be exactly as they were before. Some damage is permanent. I've been asked if I could reconsider my decision about my will if my stepson showed genuine remorse and made amends. Honestly, I don't know. Trust, once broken, is difficult to restore. Right now, I can't imagine a scenario where I would feel comfortable leaving him my assets after seeing how quickly he disrespected his mother's. For now, I'm focusing on restoring what can be restored. The pearl necklace, the sapphire earrings. I'm preserving what's left of my wife's legacy the best way I know how. And I'm protecting myself from further harm, both emotional and financial. The jewelry theft was bad enough, but what truly can't be forgiven is the casual disregard for his mother's memory and wishes. That's the real theft. Stealing not just objects, but the respect and honor due to someone who loved him unconditionally his entire life. So that's where things stand now. Update 2. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how the situation is finally concluded. To those who have followed this saga and offered support, thank you. The legal proceedings against my stepson's girlfriend moved forward quickly. She ultimately pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testifying against my stepson regarding the theft. Her testimony confirmed what I already knew. He had taken the jewelry deliberately, knowing exactly what those pieces meant to his mother and our family. What's interesting is that while the legal process was unfolding, I learned through family that my stepson and his girlfriend had broken up. Apparently she's already dating someone new and had been posting about her toxic ex online. The irony isn't lost on me. The relationship he destroyed his family for lasted all of about 6 months. 5 days after my last update, my stepson received his inheritance payment, the 30% of his mother's estate that she had designated for him in her will. Within hours of the money hitting his account, he was posting on social media about buying some elaborate gaming setup and booking a vacation to a beach resort. Not a word about his mother, not a thought about preserving any part of his inheritance as a tribute to her memory. Shortly after that, I received a rambling email from him. The gist was that he deserves more because he was Mom's real family, and I was just some guy he married. He went on about how unfair it was that I got 70% when I wasn't even blood related to his mother. The email ignored the fact that his mother and I built our life together for 18 years, that we accumulated most of our assets during our marriage, and that she specifically chose that distribution in her will. Things took a turn when my stepson failed to appear for his scheduled court date regarding the jewelry theft. A bench warrant was issued for his arrest. I figured he was just being irresponsible as usual, but then I received a call from his roommate. According to the roommate, my stepson had packed some bags and disappeared after receiving his inheritance money. He left behind unpaid rent, utility bills, and a mess in his room. The roommate was calling me because he thought I might know where he had gone. I didn't, and I told him so. A few days later, I got a call from the police. They had located my stepson in a neighboring state. He was arrested on the outstanding warrant, and, to make matters worse, he was found in possession of controlled substances. The officer didn't give me details, but indicated it was enough to warrant additional charges. My stepson was extradited back to face the theft charges and the failure to appear. During the court proceedings, he attempted to claim that the jewelry had been gifted to him by his mother before her death. The judge asked for any proof of this gift, a note, a witness, anything. Of course, he couldn't provide any evidence because no such gift had occurred. The court found him guilty of theft, given that it was his first criminal offense, at least the first time he'd been caught. He was sentenced to probation, ordered to pay restitution for the damaged jewelry, and assigned community service hours. The judge was particularly stern, noting that stealing from a deceased parent's estate showed a profound lack of respect and moral character. Christmas came, the first without my wife. I spent it with friends who had been there for us throughout her illness. I wore the restored pearl necklace as a tribute to her. It wasn't perfect. Some of the pearls had to be replaced, and if you looked closely, you could tell it had been repaired, but it was whole again, and back where it belonged. Looking back on this whole ordeal, what still strikes me most is the timing of it all. My wife had been barely gone a month when he took her most precious possessions. While I was still struggling to sleep in our bed without her, he was pawning her heirlooms for quick cash. The contrast between grief and greed couldn't be more stark. I sometimes wonder what my wife would think of how everything has played out. She always saw the best in her son, always believed he would mature and become the man she raised him to be. I think even her optimism would have been tested by his actions these past months. The jewelry has been fully restored. The legal matters have concluded. The inheritance has been distributed according to my wife's wishes. My new will is in place. This chapter is closed now. To those who have followed the story, your kindness reminded me that there are still good people in the world, people who understand the importance of respecting those we've lost and honoring their wishes. Blaming his girlfriend was predictable. Classic, "it wasn't me, she made me do it" energy. Buddy, 28, not 8. If you're old enough to drink yourself stupid on someone's doorstep at 2 a.m., you're old enough to take responsibility for your actions. And that note, be reasonable, yeah, because nothing says reason like pawning your dead mother's necklace for $800 and acting like you're the victim. Not only that, but the fact that his girlfriend flipped on him the second the cops got involved proves everything. Honestly, I'm glad you saw this through. Getting the necklace back, restoring it, wearing it at Christmas, that's powerful. You honored your wife exactly how she deserved. You did everything right, OP. What do you make of this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.